The only thing I know about Maine, my parents have been there, but one thing is signage. You can't have signage. I know that's a small little thing, but it leads to a bigger question about the mentality of the people of Maine, because I feel like, yes, your film is about defending the dark, but the unique people you have come across, these wonderful people, can you tell me about meeting these unique human beings? I feel like it's not every day you meet people like these people.
So my film Defending the Dark is about protecting the dark skies, and Maine has the largest area of dark skies east of the Mississippi. And so they're trying to protect this large area of wilderness. And the people that I was able to connect with to do this film are really passionate about protecting this area to keep the connection to the dark skies. And there's so many reasons why we need to do that, and it goes into a lot into the film. But the people, the passion that they have for protecting this space is just incredible. And I was able to talk to a couple different organizations that are doing kind of the same thing in a big general area, and they each have a different piece of it. So there's an area up in northern Maine called Katahdin Woods and Waters, and it's a national monument now. And as it was going into becoming a national monument, this one woman I met, Nancy Hathaway, was really passionate about protecting that area from light pollution. And so that was her big push to say, yes, we need to protect this, preserve this land, but we also need to protect it for the dark skies so people can come here and see and reconnect with nature in that way. And then there was another organization, two other organizations that I worked with that worked together to develop the Appalachian Mountain Club Woods. And I forget how many acres it was, but there's this huge area of land where the Appalachian Trail actually goes through. And their big push was similar. You know, we want to protect this land so that people can come out and recreate in it and connect with nature. And so they were also going around to the local towns to say, hey, it's really important for us to protect the dark skies here. And that brings in tourism to your community. So if you can lower the lights on your gas stations or your street lights, we can still have really safe lighting in the towns and have not have the light pollution go up in the sky. And so these people were just super passionate about reaching out to their communities and talking with people, getting to know them, and getting them behind the project as well.
One of the things I love about your film is we visually get to see what we're losing. How difficult is it to shoot the way you were shooting at night and getting some of these amazing shots? But I'm curious, knowing that what you're shooting will change potentially because of the actions of all of us. Did you feel like you were capturing moments in time rather than just a night sky?
Right, that's a really good question, because I read an article recently that we're losing our night sky. I forget what it was 9-point-something% light pollution increase every year, which is just incredibly a lot. And so it's really important to me to be able to capture these places, and hopefully the driving force behind what I was doing was to capture how beautiful the dark sky is and remind people of how important it is to keep that. And so I didn't think of it as saying, okay, I'm capturing this because it's going to go away. My thought was, I'm capturing this to inspire people who have maybe forgotten or don't know how beautiful the dark sky is, and how it affects everything. You know, it affects our health, it It affects the animal rhythms. It affects nature in so many ways. So yes, but to get to your question about how difficult it was to photograph some of those shots, it was difficult. You know, night sky photography is hard. You have to, first of all, have the right conditions, because in Maine you get a lot of cloudy skies, so we had to time it just right, and we lucked out. And then, you know, getting everything in focus, because everything is dark, and you know, using a red headlamp is that lower frequency, so you can maintain your night vision, so you can still kind of see what's going on and still see the camera settings. But I did a lot of time lapses, a lot of long exposure. Not super long. I did a bunch of 30-second exposures, and I did a lot of time lapses that were a whole bunch of 30-second exposures. Right, you know.
And you think those? Is that what the effect was?
Yeah.
I didn't know that was what that was. That's really cool. Can you talk a little bit about that? That's cool.
Yeah, sure. So I used a DSLR camera, and so I was able to capture one image at a time, and there's actually time-lapse settings on there. So what you're doing is you're capturing individual images, and then it compiles it into, 30 frames per second, basically. So yeah, I might sit out there for 3 hours and take one shot every 30 seconds or whatever that is. And, you know, I come out at the end of the night and I have only, 20 seconds of footage. So it was a lot of cold nights, trying to get these shots and not freeze my batteries, freeze my fingers. But it was an incredible challenge. I love being outside. I love connecting with nature, and I love photography. So being able to blend all that together, even if it was -3 degrees when I was doing it, was so worth it.
That's crazy. How did you come across night sky pollution knowledge and all this stuff?
That's a really good question. So I feel like this project was sort of like everything came together for me in the most perfect way. I had done some work, some other educational films on conservation around like hiking, and I worked with the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. And so one of the volunteers who's up in doing work in Maine saw the work I had done around like protecting the trail, and he said, "Hey, wait a minute, we're doing conservation work around the night sky. Would you want to come up and do a project like that?" And I thought, well, that perfectly aligns with everything that I love. You know, I've studied astronomy, you know, on an amateur level since I was a teenager, and you know, photography has always been a big thing of mine, and blending it into the documentary film work. That this was sort of a big step. I've been doing lots of video production work up until this point, and short documentaries. This full documentary is 35 minutes. The one showing here is 15. I have a 15-minute cut. But yeah, so this was a full 30-minute documentary. Not quite a feature, but we're close.
How much footage do you have, and how much longer do you think you can go? Could you do an hour, let's say, if PBS came calling? Yeah,
so that's a good question. When I first cut this, my intent was to do a 20-minute film. And I did 7 interviews, and I put it all together, and I had 50 minutes. And I was like, oh, this is great, but it's not quite an hour. And then I looked at the B-roll that I had. And since it takes all night to get like a 30-second clip, I didn't have enough B-roll to do a full hour film. So I cut it down and cut it down and cut it down. I couldn't get to that 20 minutes just quite. So it settled at 35 minutes, that's where it was. And it's funny you say about PBS. So actually, I did get picked up by a distributor, Nita.
Yeah.
So Nita is distributing it starting April 1st.
Wow.
And so it'll be going out to public broadcasting stations across the country. It's a 28-minute cut that we'll be doing.
Less than a month.
Yes.
April.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a great turnaround.
I got them that like the first of the year. So this has been an ongoing project. So I have that set out to them, and I was able to do the 30-minute slot and make that 28 minutes. So that's really, really exciting. But yes, I do almost have enough footage to make an hour-long film. What I don't have right now is the time or the money to do it.
Well, that could come through exposure. You never know.
Exactly, yeah.
I love that. What were you shooting on that you got this imagery?
I was shooting on a couple different cameras. Excuse me. I don't know where that came from.
Excited.
Yeah, we can cut that. So what I was shooting on was a couple different cameras. I have a Nikon Z6 Mark II.
Okay.
And that was the one that I got all of my night shots. It has incredible...
That pulled in that light?
Yes.
With the Nikon?
Yeah. So it was a long exposure. It's a full frame sensor. So I was, 30-second exposure. I was able to get incredible imagery, and anyway, so then a lot of the B-roll, daytime B-roll and interviews was done with a Sony NX100.
Okay, yeah.
So not a super high-end camera, but sort of a...
And good to edit too, because that's a quick turnover, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Because of a lot of the work I do, I like the more compressed ones, yeah. I do a lot of same-day turnaround event coverage, so I shoot a lot with that, and the H.264 compression makes it a lot easier.
So much quicker than a computer.
Yeah, not quite the same, quality you would get in some of the higher-end cameras, but I do love it.
It's good enough we don't notice.
It's good enough for most eyes. It's good enough for most eyes, yeah.
So I'm curious then. You brought up the weather. Where exactly are you getting this shot? Just so you can let people understand where you were situated, because it's not like you could just go get that shot every day.
So all of it was shot in Maine. I live in Maryland, so I took 3 trips up to Maine to get this, and I filmed in October, December, and then again in January. And
is that progressively colder?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So my October shots, we had perfect weather. I went up there for a week. We went to Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument, which is a fairly new national monument within the last, 5 or 6 years, I think. And you drive down this gravel road for 10 miles, and it takes you an hour to get there because you can't go very fast. And some of the shots were at, I think it's called the Katahdin Overlook. And so there's a big mountain in Maine, and it's the start of the Appalachian Trail or the end of the Appalachian Trail, depending on which way you go. And from that overlook, you can see the mountain. So I did some shooting there. I did some shooting in the AMC Woods, Appalachian Mountain Club. Has lodges in the 100-mile wilderness, which is along the Appalachian Trail and
Did you do
beyond.
one of the interviews there?
I did.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they have 3 lodges that you can go up and stay the night and camp or hike, and I guess you can camp too. But yeah, they have cottages to stay in. But the night sky there is phenomenal, and they have astronomy programs. They have telescopes up there that you can take out, and sometimes they have an astronomer there that can give you sort of a tour of the night sky.
That's so cool.
So those were the 2 main places that I filmed. There were a couple other small towns throughout Maine, but those were the 2 key areas and those 2 areas are designated as official dark sky zones through the International Dark Sky Association.
obviously you can't explain all of the importance of dark sky, but can you give us a snippet of why it does matter?
Yeah, sure. So dark skies have influence over animals, our health, and our safety. And let me just break them down for you just briefly. So for instance, birds, when they're migrating, they get confused when they see a lot of light. So, whatever system they use to know where they're going, when they see a lot of light, it confuses them, and they end up flying into cities and buildings. So during bird migration, if we turn off our lights, that's going to save a ton of birds. Nighttime pollinators. And this is something I learned while I was filming. There's a lot of insects that need darkness to breed and to live, and if there's too much light, then they won't. And then the balance in your backyard. And so this is what my film really hits on, is that it's not just about protecting these dark sky zones. It's about going into your backyard and saying, hey, I can change that light and I can make a difference in this little square of yard. And when you turn out the lights, then those fireflies are going to come back, and those, the frog peepers are going to come out. And like I said, the pollinators, there's nighttime pollinators that are moths that come out, and that's really important for all kinds of things, right? So anyway, yeah, all the nocturnal animals need the lights out. So that's one thing. Our health, our circadian rhythm gets thrown off if there's too much light, particularly the blue light. And so what we're looking to do is to have people put in more of a yellowish light rather than a blue light. And there's like spectrums that, relate to all of that.
Blue lights to stay awake, because it
yes.
does mess with our ability to sleep.
Yeah. So if you talk in light, you've got light is measured in Kelvin, even though it has nothing to do with temperature. But if you're in film, then you know about light's temperatures, right? And so if we're talking about 5,700 Kelvin, that's a like noon kind of brightness, right? And if we put on those light bulbs at 6 o'clock at night, our brain is going to say, hey, it's noon, I should be awake.
Yeah.
And if we get more of a red or a yellowish orange kind of glow, that's a lower Kelvin, a 2,000, 3,000 kind of Kelvin. And that's when your body says, oh, okay, maybe it's sunset. Maybe it's time for me to settle down and go to bed. And, excuse me. And so that's what we try to do. We try to encourage people to, when they shop for light bulbs, outdoor light bulbs, look for that lower Kelvin temperature, or the not daylight temperature, more of the warmer, softer glow. And then, so then that's the health. There's one more bit, the safety. So when an area is brightly lit, you might think, okay, that's safer. But actually your eyes can adjust better to dark if it is that yellow tinted frequency that it's using, and so you can see outside of where it's lit. And so if we're talking about safety and we're talking about robbers coming in or whatever at a parking lot or in your home, you'd be able to see who's outside of that brightly lit area. So it is important to light areas because we do need to see so we don't trip and fall. But there's a safe way to do it where we can still see and we can still see our surroundings, and it's not affecting the night sky, And one more thing that's really important for protecting the night sky is to shield the light. And so, you want those yellow bulbs, but then you also want a shield that's going to point the light down on the ground and not up in the sky. So those are two of the big things that we look at to do that. But yeah, in a brief way, those are the three things that really affect the earth and us. The insects, the birds, our health, and our safety.
Thank you for making it simplistic where a changing of a light bulb can make a difference. Just in the explanation. That's exactly what I wanted. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Tara, when you look at everyone outside of Maine, when you think of like Vegas, for instance, does it freak you out how we don't understand how we are impacting our world by shining things up in the sky?
Right.
Like really bright ass things.
It does bug me, and the reason it does is because it's such a simple solution if people just knew, and this is not a complicated thing. This is a matter of taking a light bulb, changing the color of it, changing the frequency, and shielding it so that it's pointed in the direction where it needs to go, and turning it off when we don't need it, right? If you're not out at midnight, you don't need your porch light on, you turn it off. So, big cities, they're just continuing to grow and put up big street lights. I'm noticing more and more on the highways, these blue bulbs. And I don't know if they're cheaper or what, but for whatever reason, these blue bulbs are being put in all over highways. And I don't know about you, but it hurts my eyes when I drive under them.
We drive in Dallas, and all along they just put them in, and it changes the entire feel of the whole drive.
Yeah. And so what's really inspiring about my film is that we see the people who have fought to protect these dark skies. They've gone and they've talked to small towns and they've talked to cities to start to change the conversation. And so we did a film tour actually up in Maine back in October, and me and one of the organizations, Dark Sky Maine, I worked with the organization up there. Was
that Ann's thing, the one lady?
It was Nancy Hathaway.
Nancy,
yes. And so she and I just piled in her truck, and we drove to 10 different towns throughout Maine, and we showed this film, and it really got the conversation going. And so we'd show it, we'd talk about what the issues were in their town, what they were seeing, and it really got people jazzed to make a difference. And so actually I do have, on my website, I have it available for communities to license. And so I'm starting to get inquiries saying, hey, we want to show this at our planetarium or our school or our library. And so that's really exciting to see that there is excitement and energy around this, that people do want to change it, but it's going to take a lot of people to say, I'm going to go to city council and I'm going to present this, and I'm going to talk to my neighbor and I'm going to change it, and I'm going to go to the hardware store and get the right kind of bulb for the night sky. So there's a lot to be done, but I'm hoping that my film makes at least a small dent in the the increase in light pollution.
What's it mean, though, to get into a festival like this that isn't Maine, that doesn't know about this, that is also an educated college town that can utilize these things? What is it like to get into a festival like Oxford? Yeah,
I'm really happy to be here at Oxford Film Festival. I've been accepted into, I think, 6 film festivals over the last year, and one in California, one in North Carolina. Now I'm here in Mississippi, and it's really because it premiered in Maine last July, and I thought, okay, well, yes, they like it because it's about them, of course. But when I started getting into film festivals outside of Maine, then I was like, oh, maybe I do have something here that people are really interested in, because it's not about Maine, I mean, it is. It tells a story of what they've done, but the bigger picture is it's about what we all can do. And it doesn't matter if you live in a big city or a small town or a rural area, you can make a difference, and that's what's so inspiring about it. And I'm so happy to be in a town like this where they can start hopefully spreading the word and making more of a conversation around what light pollution means and how it's affecting them, and maybe start making some changes. I haven't been here at night yet, so I don't know what it's like, but I know that every town I've been in, there's always some improvements that can be made. So yeah, it's just a matter of looking around and seeing who it is that needs to, who you need to talk to make those changes.
So I know for documentary filmmakers, the journey never really ends. I know this one is just beginning, but I'm curious, is there anything you are looking for next? Anything you can share with us about what's down the line for you? It doesn't have to be a film project, it can be anything.
You mean for film, for me, okay, so yes, this project, I was happy to get it off the ground and to like zip it up, so to speak. Yeah, I'm getting it out on PBS stations. I'm getting it out on community screenings, which is great. And I'm already starting another project in Maine because they were so great to work with. I went back to the state park system, who was one of the organizations we partnered with. And I said, hey, you know what I'd really like to do is the effect that the importance native plants have on our environment. And they said, oh, that's a great topic. Yes, we'll partner with you on that. And, you know, here's the people that you need to talk to. So this coming summer, I'll be starting to film about how native plants play into, you know, protecting us from erosion, and how all of the bugs and insects and bigger animals all need the native plants and to push out the invasive species. Just to keep that balance. They're better for drought. They're better for big storms because they've got deeper roots, so they soak up more water, prevent it from flooding and erosion. So yes, I'm really excited about another conservation environmental film project, also in Maine, and somewhat in a small sense related to dark skies. I'm sure I'll put in a small bit about how important light pollution is, or the lack of light pollution is for native plants. So I'm sure a little piece of this film will make its way over to the next film.
Well, Tara, thank you for having the boldness to make this film, to go on the extensive travel just to get the shots, first of all, but thank you for the time and bringing it to a place like Oxford. I know it's something that can be really appreciated, and we're definitely learning something, so thank you.
All right, thank you so much for having me.